As I walked down the street on that crisp autumn evening, I couldn't help but notice the musician sitting by the corner of the pavement. He was an old man with a worn-out violin case and a guitar slung over his shoulder. His music seemed to be drawing in people from all walks of life, young couples holding hands, businessmen hurrying to their destinations, even children skipping alongside him as he played. At first, I thought it was just the usual street performer thing, but there was something about this musician that caught my attention. He had an otherworldly quality to his music, a haunting melody that seemed to speak directly to your soul. As I listened, I felt myself becoming entranced by the beauty of his playing. But as the night wore on and more people gathered around him, I began to notice something strange. The musician's eyes would occasionally flicker towards us, but not in a way that was menacing or aggressive. Rather, it seemed almost hungry. As if he were savoring every moment we spent listening to his music. And then there were the whispers. Faint murmurs of play on and just one more song. It sounded like someone else's voice, but I couldn't quite place who. As I stood frozen in my tracks, the musician began playing a new tune, one that sent shivers down my spine. The notes seemed to weave together into an eerie harmony, drawing me closer with every passing moment. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, everything stopped. The music ceased, and the crowd dispersed like ants at dawn. But I remained, transfixed by the musician's gaze, which now held a glint of something almost sinister in its depths. It was only when he spoke that my heart truly skipped a beat. "You're next." The small town of Ravenswood was known for its quaint charm and friendly residents. However, it had one peculiar resident who seemed to draw in the attention of everyone, a street musician named Jack. He would set up his violin case on the corner of Main Street and Oak Avenue every evening at sunset, playing haunting melodies that echoed through the streets. At first, people found themselves mesmerized by Jack's talent, stopping to listen as they walked home from work or school. But soon, it became apparent that there was something unsettling about his music. The notes seemed to weave a spell around those who listened too closely, making them feel an inexplicable sense of longing and nostalgia for a time long past. As the days went by, people began to notice that Jack's audience grew larger with each passing evening. Strangers would appear out of nowhere, drawn in by the haunting sounds, only to vanish into thin air once they had finished listening. Some claimed to have seen shadowy figures lurking around Jack at night, their eyes glowing like lanterns in the dark. One stormy evening, a group of brave teenagers decided to investigate the strange occurrences surrounding Jack's music. They crept up to his violin case and listened as he played on, but this time they noticed something different. Jack was no longer alone. A figure stood just behind him, its presence only visible when it moved or cast a shadow. The teens fled in terror, leaving their friend Emily behind, who had been entranced by the music once again. When she finally broke free from her trance-like state, she found herself standing on Main Street with Jack's violin case beside her, but there was no sign of him anywhere. And as she looked down at his instrument, a single note remained etched into its surface: "The greatest audience is mine." The old man sat on the bench outside his shop, playing a mournful tune on his violin. His music was familiar to everyone in town, it seemed to match the rhythm of their footsteps as they went about their daily lives. At first, Emily thought he was just another street musician trying to make some extra money by entertaining passers-by. But there was something unsettling about this old man's performance that made her feel uneasy. She couldn't quite put her finger on it, but his music seemed different. It was as if the notes were not coming from a violin at all, but rather from within him. As she watched, more and more people stopped to listen, mesmerized by the haunting melody. They stood there for minutes, entranced, their faces frozen in time. And then, one by one, they began to sway to the music, as if drawn into some sort of trance-like state. Emily felt a shiver run down her spine. Something was very wrong. The old man's eyes seemed to gleam with an otherworldly intensity as he played on, his fingers moving deftly over the strings. And then, in perfect harmony, all the people around him began to sing, their voices blending together in a chilling chorus that sent shivers down Emily's spine. She realized too late that she was not just listening to music, she was part of it now, trapped by some unseen force within this strange and sinister melody. The old man's greatest audience had finally arrived, and they would never leave again.